Good afternoon. We compete with this program at this hour of the day with lunch arrangements outside, but luckily enough there are students down here. I recovered the files of my recording that were on a cloud server. I could not download them anymore from. But now I'm trying to convince Blackboard to accept those huge files, to give me some more time to get the recordings to you for potential use. And no pressure, obviously. Today we will look at the various strings of the theories, how they come together in a project like the Namtoon Dam, an example of a huge project with many actors, with many advisors to the actors like you, with many legal relationships of various kinds and nature, and a project that is deliberately and also accordingly labeled for the development of the People's Republic of Laos. One of the poorest countries on the globe, poor as in most of the population living from €1, $1.25 per day income. Are there people from Laos in the audience? No. No? Great. Before we get there, let's warm up with the workshop lecture questions. BWIs. What type of animals are that? You're allowed to open your law collection to simulate an exam type of situation. Or you could open your text and materials to simulate a workshop lecture situation. Or we can wait a few more seconds because you know all that I die to tell you what the answer is. Well, so let's start with the abbreviation. Over here. Bretton Woods Institutions. Plural. Oh, then we know.
Yes.
So there's so many organizations out there that half of the trick for your internship and future employment is to remember all those abbreviations. Because that is how they talk to each other on the corridor. IMF, ADP, UNICEF, blah, blah, blah. So that's part of your profession. That people are so immersed in these worlds that they talk in incomprehensible language, including abbreviations. Well, what is Bretton Woods, and what are institutions, and what are Bretton Woods institutions? Let's start with the umbrella aspect. What theme do they deal with?
Trade.
So we have a bit on trade, we have a bit on finance. What other in this auction of possible outcomes?
International framework agreement on trade, finance, international monetary policies.
Yeah. Monetary, and then monetary arrangements for what purpose in the back? What is the concern with monetary where in the history do we locate the Bretton Woods Conference and consequently the Bretton Woods institution? 1944. So already during the war, because out of the planes everybody could see that the territories below were destroyed. Geographically, where is Bretton Woods? In the United States. It's a sort of mountain resort in the state of New York, I believe. You know, hotel. And then where are the Bretton Woods institutions located? As we speak. Switzerland? No? Neighbor? Yes? Say it again? Washington? And then, did you say Seattle? No. Okay. So how can we distinguish between the Washington where Seattle is the capital? So we call it Washington, D.C. D.C. stands for District of Columbia, which is sort of a piece of federal territory in the United States of America. Do we have the equivalent in the EU? No. There's not a sort of Brussels, D.C., where EU law applies. So that's why I always say EU law doesn't exist. We have member states, and in the member states law applies. And then they're lousy or lazy legislators, so they import rules from Brussels. Yeah, so and when you're in law school in DC, and when you're practicing law in DC, there are some sort of exceptions to the rules, because also DC legislators are lazy. So when it comes to private law, for instance, they say, are we going to set up a whole private law system? Let's import from the neighbors. Perfectly right. Wonderful. Okay. And all the other institutions originating from the negotiation table of the Bretton Woods Conference Center are also in Washington, D.C., United States of America. Well, and then we would like to have a list of those institutions. World Bank. What is the official name of the World Bank? Something, and that is exactly, yes?
International Bank for Development and Reconstruction.
International Bank for Development and Reconstruction. That's the other abbreviation. IBDR. All right. And if you have to give a company profile of the IBDR and you zoom in on the B, sir, what is the IBDR most likely doing if it is the B of a bank? Yeah, so a little bit more precise. So if I ask you to give a profile of a bank, so forget about the IBDR. So what is the bank doing? And after the lending? Yes, but the World Bank is not giving money to states. Yes, so let's zoom in on the B of the bank. So they lend money and then what? Sure, invest.
So they expect return.
Yes, so technically what happens with the money? Yeah, so we come to the security. So after the lending, what happens? with the lending, they impose all kinds of conditions to realize another aspect of their company profile or the goals of the profile. The goal of a bank is to lend money and then what? Get interest and then ultimately
Get the money back.
get the money back. Ladies and gentlemen, banks are very simple companies. They lend money and they want it back with interest. So the World Bank is a bank. So they lend money, they get it back. It's important because official development assistance smells like development aid, smells like giving money. The bank is a bank, gives money, want it back with interest. So apparently, if that is part of ODA, the way they do it is qualifying the activity as official development assistant. How? By having very easygoing and simple contracts with very long terms, so that you may take your time to pay back. A very low interest rate, so that there's a chance that you survive. So the aid aspect is in the articulation of the loan conditions, not that the rich countries are pumping money in poor countries just for the fun of it. As the Marshall help USA to Europe was not just for the fun of it, was a deliberate calculation. If we invest money, then ultimately we get customers back. And Mr. Marshall was right. Because what do you have in your bag? 90% American products. And so I want you to be completely aware of the mechanisms of economy, which are okay, because there's this invisible hand, organizing resources in such a way that everybody is doing what he or she wants to do. All right. Then the IMF is this currency pillar of the Bretton Woods institutions to assist states that threaten to collapse because of the function of money is dysfunctional. And then what other institutions are there in the basket of the Bretton Woods institutions? In the mandatory reading, they are all described. And in this workshop lecture, I count on your reading. All right. So much for the mandatory reading. Oh, what's the problem with the books? I see. That's bad news. That's very bad news. So let me look into that after the lecture. But I got mine in 2 days. So, and that's very bad news. And there are no ways to then borrow each other's books and the like? You just leave it like that? Okay. Let me think of that. All right. Let's move on to the second question. And maybe as a hint, the content of the text and material is available online, and the links are in the course description. Exactly. Yes.
Is there a political aspect to the funds that the IBDR and the IMF provide for countries? Because the shareholders ultimately are the countries themselves. Do they have any say or within the decision making of the bank into who the funds go or don't go?
Okay, good question. Let me repeat it. So the political aspect of the Bretton Woods institutions and the European and Asian African equivalent of it. So when we talk about the World Bank, we automatically talk about the European Development Bank, the Asian Development Bank, the African Development Bank, because they are copy-pasted from the Washington example. So that's one. Two, those institutions are part of the recipe of finance and development in two ways. One, they assist in step two, mobilizing international private resources for development. And two, they are a tool in the official development assistance, which is step 4 of the recipe. That is official development assistance. So, in their capacity of Pillar 2, the mobilizing international resources, they function as a bank, and they help private investors to take the step to start investing in the other country, because they are present in all countries, they have knowledge of many countries, and they can offer sort of a little bit better conditions, but not too much different from commercial banks. So they act as a quasi-commercial bank, but they are specialized in these types of projects, so they are always at the front row to participate. Where other commercial banks say, well, let's not invest far away, or loan money to investors across the board, or beyond borders, let's stay home safely. And so they have a clear international agenda, but they act in Pillar 2 as a commercial bank. Then in the official development assistant role, it could be the same project, they offer better conditions. And that is how the political influence of the owners of these institutions is played out. Political influence is that the member states own the bank and the IMF and the other institutions. You will know hopefully next week after reading. And as an owner, they have two agendas. One, they want that their money is spent in a fruitful way. And secondly, they have a sort of soft law state obligation to adhere to the Monterey, Doha, Busan agenda. So as a donor state, they signed off on the Monterey recipe. So it's in their interest and their state obligation to foster private foreign investment. And where that is not enough, they spend 0.7% of their gross domestic product, or a little less, and they channel that through, partly, through these institutions. So if you're a state, and you sign off on Monterey, Doha, Busan agenda, which is the same agenda, the 7 pillars, the recipe, then, hey, you have this obligation to help, develop, and then the technical way to do so is, hey, we own these institutions, so let's them do the work. So in technical sense, the donor states wire a big chunk of their committed money to Washington, to these various institutions, who then in their different roles make sure that it is wired to the projects that are actually realizing the development, like the Namtung Dam. And there the politics interfere. Because you could say, are we wiring the full package to Washington? Or do we keep part in our own capital? Because official development assistance is also emergency relief. You know, tsunami, Haiti earthquake. Then part of that same 0.7% of the budget is then wired immediately to the emergency relief organizations, Médecins Sans Frontières, UNICEF, Red Cross, all kinds of organizations that are specialized in emergency help, who actually need money. There are a few United Nations organizations, refugees and development, all kinds of emergency organizations who then also get money. So the thinking is, we talk about legal persons established in Washington with the characteristic that their owners and shareholders are states. States are also legal persons and they can own shares. Like you can own shares in your telecommunication or train company, you can own shares in a Washington, D.C. company. Okay. Then they have a double, let's say, company goal to be a regular bank, but specialized in fancy projects, complicated projects, in developing areas, territory. And two, they are the hands and mouth and tools of all those states that oblige themselves to participate in Pillar 4 of the recipe, official development assistance. And if you apply that in one project, you get these fascinating pictures where the organizations are visible at multiple spots. So here we have a BWI, the EDA. Here we have a BWI, the NIGA. Then we have here the BWI, the EDA again. So here we have the EDA with 42 million. And here we have the EDA with 20 million. This is debt financing, loan facilities. So a classic loan. Here's the money, you want it back. And here it's equity finance. Okay, let's pump in money in the Laos state enterprise, so that that company has money which it can invest in the dam, and that is a long-term arrangement. So this is a grant. So that is sort of the last thing they can do, is that they are not functioning as a bank, but as a donor, as here's the money, be happy. And that is why this is not the International Bank for Development and Reconstruction, but the EDA. And then we talk about this contract, where we meet another BWI, the International Development Association. That's EDA. Hello, EDA. Is there a real EDA in the room? Oh, well. And the EDA is part of the BWIs in Washington, Bretton Woods institutions, with a specific task to be basically the purse of the international community to give grants to specific recipients. Recipients that are in that bad shape that even the easiest loan is already not possible. Because there's no, there are only palm trees, to put it in a caricature. So they will never be able to pay it back under normal banking conditions. And then the politics is that the shareholders decide with the list, which is on the website of the Bretton Woods Institution, which countries qualify to be in the recipient list of the EDA.